Every day, millions of workers in the United States go to their workplace and use chemicals as a part of their daily routine. Many of the chemicals we use can be dangerous if they are not stored properly or if we are not using the right equipment to protect ourselves while using the chemical. For over 30 years in the United States, employers who work with chemicals were required by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, to follow regulations relating to the safe handling and storage of chemicals in the workplace. Those regulations were called the Hazard Communication Standard. In 2012, the Hazard Communication Standard was revised to incorporate GHS-based labeling and information requirements. So what is GHS, and how does it affect you and your workplace? Let's take a look. What is GHS? GHS stands for the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals. GHS was conceived and adopted by the United Nations in 1992. The intent of GHS is to standardize the way information on chemicals is determined and then how that information is transmitted to distributors and users of a chemical while in transit or when stored or used. The goal is the safe transport, storage, use, and disposal of chemicals worldwide. Why was this necessary? Many of the chemicals we use or are exposed to are produced or imported from foreign countries. There was no standardization on how a chemical was determined to be hazardous, or even how hazardous a chemical is between different countries. For example, a chemical could be classified as hazardous by one country, requiring special procedures and equipment, while another may consider the same chemical as non-hazardous with lesser or even no requirements for safe handling of the chemical. In addition, the labeling of a chemical can differ from country to country, or even between different manufacturers in the same country. The confusion caused by these differences may have played a part in many of the chemical accidents that have occurred worldwide because of the misunderstanding of the handling or storage requirements for the chemicals. Even though GHS was formally adopted by the United Nations, it is considered a non-mandatory or non-binding agreement. It is not a regulation or a standard under United Nations laws. This means that even though a country may be a member of the UN, that country is not required to follow or adopt GHS. Some countries are already working under GHS, while others are preparing to adopt or implement the system. Still others have not decided whether to adopt the system, and some have rejected the system entirely. Even in the United States, there was confusion about the requirements for labeling and information about a chemical, depending on which governmental agency had jurisdiction. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Transportation, and even OSHA had different requirements for labeling and information. The adoption of GHS by the United States will not only reduce confusion among users and transporters of the chemicals, but will also reduce regulatory issues with these agencies by standardizing the requirements. The OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, or HCS, is a part of the General Industry Standards. It can be found under 29 CFR 1910.1200. The original Hazard Communication Standard was published in 1983. This was commonly known as the Right to Know law because every employee has the right to know what is in the chemicals they use and what equipment and procedures are needed to protect them from injuries and illnesses that could be caused by the chemical. The standard required employers to provide training on chemicals used in the workplace